Hey, hey, happy Friday, Jews and Goyim alike. Anyone out there? Join the stream. Let me post a link. Hold on. There is a link if anyone wants to join. Yes. Noahide stream. Ask the ignorant Noahide anything. Actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about Sola Scriptura, since that is a timely topic on the Discord lately, and a source of contention between Christians, but I think also relevant to the overall Abrahamic faith community. In short, I don't think Sola Scriptura is a tenable position because, well, number one, when it comes to Christianity, it's usually advocated by Protestants who are referring to the New Testament in addition to the Hebrew Bible, and you really can't say that the Bible alone is everything when the Bible alone doesn't have the full canon of the Bible. The canon of the New Testament was argued and ratified by the church, and ultimately it is the church that has the authority to make these kinds of declarations. So change my mind. Clown, will I be joining the next book club? I think so, yeah. I'm planning on reading, I think it's The Lonely Man of Faith. And I haven't started yet, but I will give it a try. I could not get through Rabbi Sachs' book. I think I just was not the intended audience, and could not be bothered to finish it. No offense to anyone, but just could not do it. What's up, Trey? Noahide support. Hey, Billy. How are you? So Elijah says, don't Protestants just expand the definition of the church to be the community of all believers? Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a pretty slippery concept, I think, for Protestants. And, you know, I think it's kind of akin to the argument that, like, you know, isn't God just like bigger than all of us? And, you know, like what can you say? I don't think it really gets us very far. Also, if the church is the community of all believers, which, I mean, it is, of course, in some sense, but you know, the unity of the church is not reflected in that diaspora of community of all believers, I think. And apologies, I have a little bit of a cold I'm getting over, so I'm going to be a little raspier than normal. Trey said he would like my thoughts on the last chapter. I don't think, Trey, you're going to give my thoughts on the last chapter unless you want to start bidding. I will accept donations to read the book. Elijah says, just like the early church defined the canon, it's one end for canon. Otherwise, that's a weapon of war. So to can Protestants just say they? Oh, try that one again. I'm having trouble parsing your English. Trey says Sachs quotes that an atheist who is dragged by his wife would help society more than a believer who prays alone. Ooh, shots fired. So tell me more about that, Trey. Jump on here. We can talk about that. What is everyone up to on this Friday afternoon or morning? There's 7 people tuned in. Oh, Trey's got to finish his workout. Trey, I'll give you a workout. Get in the ring. Step in the ring here. The Noahide Arena. Oh, okay. Sorry, Elijah. I get what you're saying now. I just had to read it before I try to just read it aloud for the class. The early church defined the canon, so too can Protestants say they, as the community of believers, define what it is today. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, that doesn't do much. I mean, I guess they can say it, but I don't find it very compelling. Which is why I, as a Protestant, converted to Catholicism. I think if you take the axioms of Christianity, you've got to end up as a Catholic or maybe an orthodoxic, but probably not a Protestant. Although, interestingly, as a former Christian, now a Judaism respecter, I understand some of the Protestant arguments as well. So it's an interesting kind of overlap of the intellectual opponent of my opponent being my friend, for sure. So, in fairness to Protestants, though, I think that hold on. Judaism respecter is a better term. Well, I mean, then what, a Noahide? I think, yeah, I don't love the term Noahide. Far be it from me to, you know, um, make statements on the right terminology or whatever, but Noahide to me just, I think it's confusing to people who are uninitiated and feels like a different, maybe a different religion or a different system of belief. But anyway, sola scriptura, I think, is, I can try to steelman it a bit by saying that the written scripture is the normative and authoritative teaching of the religion, which I think is, that's fair, but also not in practice what ends up happening. Yeah, so Klein says, I guess one issue is that there doesn't seem to be a hermeneutic to determine what scripture is. And I think that's fair. I think that even if you take the Bible to be the default, the normative, you're then to the point of arguing about interpretations, because I can tell you that I started my journey into Catholicism by reading the blog back before it was called a blog, but it was a website from the late 90s by a man named Dave Armstrong, who had this website called Biblical Proofs for Catholicism or something to that effect. I should see if it's still around. It's very 1990s internet website aesthetic. But it was basically like, okay, well, starting from the Bible, let's prove out Catholicism. And so I actually ended up becoming convinced of Catholicism through almost basically through a sola scriptura lens, ironically, and then learn to um, jettison that idea. But I tell this story relatively well. It's come up before, but like I went to a Baptist high school and was a Calvinist, so that was already a little weird. But there were plenty of Calvinists at this Baptist high school, um, and when I converted to Catholicism, that caused a little bit of a stir. And my high school principal, um, who was already kind of a insecure hothead type, confronted me in the library at one point and said, "Well, you signed some sort of declaration of faith, and if you believe something different, then you should leave the school." And I was a senior, like maybe a couple months from graduating, so I was kind of below the belt uh, punch, and I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll do that if you can show me where in the Bible the Trinity is uh, is used, like the term." Because maybe I was talking about purgatory or something where it's like it's not technically in the Bible as a word. And anyway, that shut him up. He walked away, and I never heard from him again and graduated. So it's a complicated world out there. What was my wife? So my wife and I met at Calvin University, what Jacob likes to refer to as Servetus University. It was a college back then. They didn't have uh, graduate degrees in, I don't know, education or whatever they do now that gives them the university title. Calvin College. She came from more of a kind of a Mennonite Quaker evangelical background, so even a little more goofy than my Reformed Baptist upbringing, I think. I mean, I say goofy. Yeah, I mean it's I'm not sure how to describe that difference, but uh, certainly, well, in some ways, less anti-Catholic because they weren't concerned about that as much, but also further away from Catholicism than my Reformed kind of Calvinist upbringing. Um, so but I mean, we were effectively nuns, NONES for a while. Yeah, Anabaptist, but like without being Anabaptist the way my Baptist high school was Anabaptist. Um, so I don't know, very like kind of mainline megachurch evangelical, but with some Mennonite characteristics. Trey, but Putnam says that attending church has intense psychological effects. So yeah, maybe so. I don't know who Putnam is. Maybe you can tell me about who Putnam is and why that appeal to authority matters. But I don't attend church right now, but and like maybe that would be a good idea, but it's tough. I suppose there is an Orthodox church nearby, but there's also a Catholic church nearby. I should probably consult my rabbi. My wife wants to go to church. My kids should probably go to church. It's better than nothing, maybe. We even have a Coptic church nearby. Should listen to your wife. Well, what if she's wrong? But I'm kidding. Yeah, you should get a wife. So, touche. I feel like I could count the married people in this little corner on maybe two hands, but all the people in this little corner on like multiple hands. The head of the woman is the man. Where does that come from? Is that Paul of Tarsus thinking? Yeah, Billy, jump on, man. Be cool to chat. I do think it's kind of fun to just engage with the peanut gallery. Being in the peanut gallery is also kind of fun because you don't have to wait for like people to stop talking to interject. You can just kind of throw your barbs. And Trey's Tarsus posting. Yeah, that's a faux pas for Jacob's channel, but not for the meta community. They're very Tarsus respecting. I forget who it was. I was recently. Oh, it was the video. Here, I gotta find it. Give me a moment. I am not finding this. Well, this is a lull, but it was I don't know if it was a rabbi or an academic guy, but basically talking about why Judaism is true because it was a mass revelation, and he went through all like the academic reasons why it couldn't be something else. Like he talked about the past, present, and future theory. Trey watched it. Somebody had posted it a while back, and I watched it too, and I thought it was really compelling. And now I'm totally forgetting. Oh, the reason I brought it up is because earlier in that video, the argument was that all the world religions were started by like one or two people who got some kind of private revelation and then took it to the rest of the group and said, "Hey, this happened to me." And TLDR is that Christianity began with Paul of Tarsus having his road to Damascus experience, and then basically that was the origin of Christianity. Kind of the Jesus story and lifetime was all like kind of retrospective, and like that had happened already, but like it was really Paul who invented Christianity, which I guess is a theory that's been talked about around here before, but I maybe hadn't like put it together in that kind of a stark way or like thought about it from that perspective. I mean, I would think that if like I suppose Mary did not invent Christianity just because she got pregnant and was like, well, I better say it's from God, and then you just made up the whole thing. All right, Trey. I hope it's really you. I'm going to add you to the stage. Don't peep on me.
I won't peep on you. I promise.
All right, hold on. Let me. What about what 500, Elijah? And Casey Clement says, I hear that theory asserted a lot without much evidence. Which theory? The Paul invented it? Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know what evidence. Like, yeah, I don't know how you'd really falsify that theory. Trey, do you want to button your shirt a little bit or something before you?
Yes, I will. This is a Christian channel. I understand.
Yeah, it's not. It's not modest.
You're right. You know, can't be showing the guns out. You know, this time of year. Okay. So, what do you want to talk about?
Oh, we can talk about whatever. I'm just I'm killing time. But here comes Billy. Hey, what's up, man?
Uh-oh.
What's up?
How are
Hey,
you,
Billy?
How you doing, Trey? How you doing, Jonathan? I don't think I've actually spoke to you in person, Jonathan. Hope you're doing well.
No, yeah, I'm doing well. I'm getting over a cold, but that's not unwell in the grand scheme of things.
Understand. How about you, Trey? You all right, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good. Just had to close myself.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Trey. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. Not much. How you doing, Billy?
Good as I can. It's always nice to jump on during a lunch break, you know.
Yep.
Is it a late lunch for you, or are you in a middle of the country time zone, Billy?
No, I'm on the East Coast, but yeah, man, I don't. I take lunch when I get free, man.
Mm-hmm. I hear you.
Yeah. Food is a necessity, not something I care too much about.
Hey, where are you heading to next?
Back to work.
At an undisclosed location?
Yep. If you saw it, I'd had to kill you.
Wow.
So I did want to talk about the Putnam quote that I mentioned. So
what's
again, a lot of what Rabbi Sachs' view in the book is pretty much pragmatic, and I think that's the strongest. And I guess what Putnam, who wrote Bowling Alone, where he talked about how the fact that like community is dying, he mentioned and basically did a bunch of studies that regular church attendance had a host of benefits: more likely to donate, more likely to give blood, more likely to volunteer, more likely to help a neighbor, everything like that. And he posed and basically said that if an atheist went to church, he would probably do more for the community than somebody who prays alone. So I'd like your thoughts on that.
Well, do you think that's correlation or causation?
Well, I guess the question is, do you believe that friends and the people you associate with can have psychological effects that you may not realize?
100%. I think, which is it? Evil companions corrupt good morals or something? Is that from Proverbs?
Yep.
Stuff my dad said.
Good association.
Yeah. So I'll take that. So the assumption there is like church going is a proxy for good friends, good companions.
No. I mean, it's that they're inspiring you to do good.
Sure.
Like you could do psychiatry at home. That's possible. Pretty much you could read a psychiatry book on yourself, or you could go to a psychiatrist and be reminded of things you need to improve on.
Totally. So it's like having a teacher.
Yeah.
But if you're so some people can be autodidacts and they can read books and learn. Other people can benefit from or will also benefit from a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Companion.
Do you think you can recognize the problems that you don't know about?
Can you recognize problems you don't know about? So can you suss out the unknown unknowns?
Yes.
I think if you consciously, if you have a yeah, I think you can. I think if you have a if you explicitly set out to discover the unknown, then you may be able to discover things that you did not know.
Okay.
So you have to
Do you
have
think?
like maybe you have to have a mindset.
Okay.
Yeah. What are you driving under?
A parking structure.
What if you have an earthquake right now? Do you know where you'll go if you die, Trey? I'm just kidding. Sorry, keep going. I
The
think
classic.
yeah. Sorry.
Well,
I
but
think
do you
in
get what I'm
California,
saying?
yeah, I do get what you're saying. I think that there are certainly benefits to having teachers, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee you're going to get your blind spots exposed. I think you still
It
have
doesn't
to
necessarily
augment.
guarantee, but it approximates it. Look, I'll say something a little bigger. There's a that convinced me of this. There's a debate between T Jump and Aaron Raw, where T Jump, someone who'd been arguing against religion for most of his life, and again, these people are both two atheists. T Jump proposed that we need to create our own religion. And to me, that was like, okay, game set match. Like that's it. You know what I mean? If a prominent atheist says that the idea of religion is something that is a necessary good, then I think that's game set match. If all the studies are pointing in a certain direction where having religious beliefs and going to church improves your life, then I don't know how you would get around it. Like if everything said that going to church improves your life,
Mhm.
how would you not do that?
Well, I think it's not. There are counterfactuals, right? There are plenty of people for whom church does not improve their lives, or hurt or ruin their lives. I mean, ruin probably is pretty extreme, but so I won't let the exceptions necessarily like overcome the rule, but it doesn't seem like a universal axiom.
But that's like saying that some people who work out can get heart attacks. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't work out. Like again, we go off statistics rather than anecdotes.
Well, that's a good example. So like, I mean, if you work out, like, is it proven how many like years you're going to add to your life?
Yeah, you can do
I don't
longitudinal
know.
studies.
I don't think so.
I don't.
You can't.
I don't-
Oh, okay. You can't prove how much it's going to do, but
Oh,
by
well,
definition. But you
right,
can at
but
least say on average.
there is, but there is an argument for joint health. You know, that the question is does working out, running twice, 2 miles a day for 50 years hurt your joints more than being 30 pounds overweight for 50 years? That's something you need to ask yourself. Right? How much impact are you doing? How much impact is being done to your body while you're working or while you're not working out? So, yeah, I think we have a tendency to look at the grand scheme, overarching effects and forget the small little details that cause us pain throughout the day, the little spikes in our neck. Yeah, my overall life might be a lot better if I go listen to a preacher every Sunday, but if I'm miserable that 1 hour, how much am I carrying that over? But here's a bigger question is am I more worried about the effects of what I do for my family more than myself? And is the effects of what I do going to affect the people around me in a more beneficial cause? Because if I don't have a problem being uncomfortable if what I do benefits the people around me versus just benefiting myself.
Again, I'm not saying a Christian preacher. You can just go to Unitarian Universalist and plug in whatever you want. I'm saying church community is something that's important. And I would say that, yes, like you say it right there, Billy, right? Like if the statistics show that maybe you have a little bit of suffering going to church, your life will be better. And I just don't know how we get around it. Like if the statistics show that going to McDonald's on average is going to make your life worse than not going. You could say, well, there's people who only eat from the vegetable meal. Yeah, that's true. That's true. You know, like there's also people who never buckle their seatbelt and are more likely or survive car crashes because they don't. But we don't say to people, well, don't buckle your seatbelt because one person didn't.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, I mean, I'm sympathetic to the go to church argument in this little corner. You know, I think that there are probably a small contingent of non-Christian, non-Jewish folks who don't really have a good outlet. Right? Like I would say I'm in a very narrow minority of people who choose not to go to church, but not because like they're atheists or because they're too online. I just it's not my religion. So I mean, you know, I have other options I could do, and they're more annoying than going to church because they're less available readily. But I guess I don't disagree with you, Trey. Like I just think that like there are going to be some people for whom it's either not possible or not applicable, and like there are probably ways to mitigate the lack of church community.
But why do you have a problem with the Unitarian Universalists? Sorry.
Well, because even though like theologically they believe in nothing, like their politics and their worldview is typically pretty antithetical to Judaism, Orthodox Judaism. I mean, it's basically it's a liberal political church.
Very much so. Very much so. I don't want those
like,
people around my kids.
Yeah, thank you. Exactly. So like, yes, they're not Trinitarians, Trey. And like, I mean, I guess the more interesting thing would be like maybe Sam's world, which is not UU. It's just they're just Unitarian.
My point isn't on the theological point that they're Unitarian Universalist. My point is that you can go there and plug whatever you want into it and make defenses for whatever you want.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. They're a leftist political church. Like they're not friendly to people who believe that, you know, God gave the Torah to Moses at Sinai.
Well, even if Trey's correct, even if Trey's correct, let's do a thought experiment. I don't know one way or the other if he's right or wrong, but do you really want the little people that you're responsible for training up in the right way so they'll grow up to do the right thing? Do you really want them around 50 other people that are just plugging in whatever they want? Like, do you really want to give those people opportunity to train your kids up in a different way than you see fit? That's where to have a community for community's sake, if you're just talking about you, okay, no problem. But if you're responsible for people and them going the right way, having a community for community's sake might not be the best idea unless you can stomach something that is morally rigorous, right? Does that make sense? Go to a Buddhist church, just even if you don't believe in Buddha, but they're more morally rigorous, right? Unitarians, the universal Unitarians, at least in this area, a lot of them have charges that are not good, right? You start looking up, at least in this area, it's a lot. The two Universalist churches that I've seen, been to, talked to, those people are on registries, some of them, and I'd rather be more careful with that. Any church I go to, I don't care if it's a Baptist or anything, because I'm a Unitarian, but I'll go to a Baptist church all day long. I want my kids to go to Christian schools because there's no Noahide schools. Private schools that aren't religious are way too expensive. and I prefer my kids not to be in a private in a public school because the same thing. I can't control what they're learning. I don't know. I have no idea why there's somebody from New York City with a master's degree teaching in my little podunk town with 1,000 people in it. Right? Why is that? Why are they here? That's red flags to me. You know, so I, me personally, before I go to a community, I start running searches on all the people. Do they have any background? Right? Are they on any predator list? Things like that. Who's associated with the church? Who's associated with the school? Who's associated with the community program? These are things that you have to take in mind when, at least when you have kids like I do. So, just a thought.
Right. Yeah, and I think Billy Ray is more pragmatic, and that's why I'm more on his side. He says there aren't any no-hide schools. So do I just give up, or do I accept what I have now? The reason I'm saying, of course, plug-and-play people aren't going to be the best, but coming from, like, I don't think it's good necessarily to homeschool your kids unless you're Amish. Like, you can do that if you want, but I think that they're going to turn out a little weird. That's my view on that. But I guess my question, Jonathan, is like, if the benefits are good, why not just suck it up a little?
No, that's a good question. Because I'm not sure that the benefits are that good. But okay, let's just say the benefits are like clear and like universal enough to be irrefutable. I mean, I don't want to take my family to a house of worship of a man.
Okay. You can do like Seventh Day Adventists. I don't know. Joe's Witness.
Let me know where the Aryan church is. I'll take them there, but it's I'm gonna have a hard time at most Christian institutions.
Here's the real reason. I'll be honest. I just don't know that if you don't go to church, I don't know how that faith continues. Like, I just don't see it continuing in the children. And I think that's something you want at the very least as well.
That's a fair point. I think that I don't have a great answer to that though at this point. And yeah, that's true. I mean, it's, you know, I'm not gonna say that's checkmate.
It's your life.
You can say check, but you can't say checkmate.
That's okay. You know, it's your life. It's your advisory, but I just feel like somebody who goes to a church where I have like 30 disagreements with, but at the end of the day, they don't really talk about it that much. I'm kind of cool with it. I go to a non-denominational church. They have brought up the Trinity barely once in the last 3 months. I can just tell my kids, hey, we're Unitarians. If people argue about it, don't argue about it. Just move on. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. But so here's the trick, though. Okay, like you could be Unitarian, right? But if you're at a Christian church and they think that Jesus is God, you gotta be like, well, all right, kids, guess what? Like, God is God and Jesus isn't God, but like we're just here because there wasn't a better alternative.
Do you? Okay. No, but this.
You should probably just take him to the synagogue, but we got to figure out how to make that work.
This is the same with like conservatives who like don't use the pronouns of other people, right? Like, you could do that. You fundamentally disagree with their identification, right? But out of respect for them, you either don't bring it up or you just respect them.
Right. Well, I think you're forgetting something. If somebody has completely rejected Christ, Jesus altogether, and they're going into the so it's very different for, let's say, a Christian or a Unitarian, someone who believes Jesus is part of the equation, just not God. You can't say being in their worship is idolatry, but when you're talking about someone who is aligning themselves with orthodoxy, Jewish orthodoxy, you're starting to split. You might be taking your family into idolatry from the Jewish orthodoxy perspective. So that's something else you really got. If you're aligning yourself with Jewish orthodoxy, then you really got to think about, well, if I go into a Christian church, am I borderlining idolatry for me specifically? Because I'm just saying that's something that you need to talk to a rabbi about, because it's different for people who already accept Jesus or who think certain things about Jesus. But someone who's aligning themselves with the Orthodox Jewish community, that's something you need to consult your rabbi about before you ever step foot in a Christian church, in my personal opinion.
Right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, man. I'm just saying there's
Okay.
caveats there.
Billy, do you clink glasses? Like, do you do cheers?
Oh, sure.
Okay. That comes from the Greeks cheering to the gods. And I guess my question is, do we continue that tradition? Because the origin of it was something of an idolatrous nature, of something that was worshiping other gods.
That's different.
I don't think
The
for one. So look, this is something I struggle with, and I'm constantly having conversations with people about that are way smarter than me. Like, I freak out when my kid has a coloring book with Jesus in it, because my wife is a Trinitarian. So I'm not a Trinitarian. I don't think Jesus is God, so I don't have a problem with it. My wife has a picture of Jesus. She's a Trinitarian. I get antsy. Is that idolatry because she thinks Jesus is God? What I get antsy, right? This is something I struggle with. I'm just saying it's something you got to think about. Some people struggle with this question. I'm not saying Jonathan does. I'm just saying that this is something I struggle with.
Yep.
The point I'm trying to make is that I think God judges our hearts, at least for understanding it and having all these little minutiae that you could do. Maybe if you're more Jewish, that would be under your idea, but I just feel as though that God's going to understand where we're at and take that into consideration.
Oh, yeah. But that argument right there is something that is leveled. Most Protestants level that against most people who hold the Torah to a tighter view, right? Who rein in their behaviors to a tighter view because of the Torah.
Right.
So,
and I think to that point, Trey, like, so God judges us where we're at, and I'm at far enough where I probably shouldn't go to church.
Okay.
I know better.
Okay.
So to speak. I mean, maybe I don't. Like, I mean, it's just, but like, that's the consideration, is like, am I going to pretend like I'm not aware of the situation? So I mean, I'll probably put a Christmas tree up this year because it's a festive American decoration. We're not dancing around it. Asking the.
I feel more uncomfortable with that than anything else, but okay.
Are Christmas trees not kosher for JWs? Are they anti-Christmas tree?
JWs don't celebrate holidays.
Holidays, period.
Because they're pagan idolatry.
Okay, so that's why this is such a weird conversation, because like you understand the impetus behind this.
Because then I would go to no churches.
Right.
And my spiritual life would suffer. I'd literally just be in a desert disagreeing with everything.
Well, wait a minute though. Like, I mean, here we are chatting right now. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that Jacob's Discord is like substitute for church, but it's not zero.
It's not zero. That's true. But me getting a cup of coffee with a couple of friends is also not zero.
Right. But so, I think this is a very individualistic thing, man. Right. Because I can put that round peg in a square hole doesn't mean everybody else can. And just because you can do it doesn't mean everybody else can. So
Yeah, stop judging me, Trey.
but and I'm not saying you're judging. I'm just
And
saying that I mean, everybody takes them in a different path. Now, I would say that if your path is all right, let's not, find established community, or let's not be part of established communities because of my belief, then I would say that it's actually your responsibility to create community for yourself. And so I think the church aspect of things is more the fact that there's community around you than the liturgical services, in my personal opinion.
I don't.
Because you have people that have similar values to you. If you go to a church, then you're going to have people that's going to have a lot of similar values to you, and you have 20, 30, 40 people around. Just the fact that you're around somebody that thinks stealing is bad just like you do, you're not going to think about swiping that $5 out of the offering plate, right? It's a silly example, but I think when you're around people who have similar views as what you do, you all hold each other to that standard, if not a higher standard. So I don't necessarily think liturgical services is what does it, in my opinion.
Okay. I respect that, and I agree with that in a sense, Billy. But I guess my point is, the more I read Jung, the more I see that the psychological effects that things have on us, we do not recognize. And I would say that it, like, I would say that understanding what church is, or understanding the importance of church, is something that a lot of people have said, especially today, that, oh, it's just these little things. And then we see this monstrous thing that has emerged out of it as a replacement for it. The idea that we don't need symbols, that we don't need liturgy, that we don't need these things, I don't think that's true. I think those work on fundamentally different levels that we will always need as humans.
Right, that's a fair point.
You mean archetypal thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, I'm not only saying the archetypes. I'm saying that we have an unconscious, and I would say that the unconscious is going to do a lot of things that we will never recognize as the conscious. I don't know. I respect your journey. All I'm saying is, I think there's a lot of benefits, and disagreements is the nature of church, I think.
Right. Well, I have a question for you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
So I know Orthodox synagogues are hard to come by, but being in Noahide, does it matter if it's Orthodox or conservative or Reformed? Does that matter to you specifically?
Yeah, it does. Probably for the same reason I wouldn't go to a Universal or a Unitarian Universalist church. Like, I'm not necessarily going to go to a place where they don't believe the core tenets of Judaism, or don't believe in like the 13 principles, or don't believe in that Moses existed, or the Exodus happened, or whatever.
Right.
There is a Chabad house nearby, and I should probably go introduce myself there. But it's not a normal situation, right? Like, so I don't know really what will come of it, but I should start there.
I understand. Well, I when I was in my questioning phase, like way before I ever thought about Christ at all, I went to a Reformed synagogue for a year and a half, almost 2 years.
Wow.
It really helped me personally. I was an alcoholic then, and shortly after I left there, I quit being an alcoholic. So I think I learned a lot of good things that helped me overcome or to continue on my journey of sobriety personally. But it's different when you start introducing your kids stuff. That's what I'm saying. That was me alone, right? When you start bringing your kids around or your wife around, people you're responsible for teaching, that's when you start getting into this whole, well, what is okay for me to overlook? Is it okay for me? Is it okay for me to overlook it for my children?
Right. Yeah, it's a lot stickier when you have a family, for sure.
Right. And I have found out the hard way. Just don't show up at churches or synagogues. You should call first.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I heard about your trip to the Coptic?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that is not the first time it's happened to me. It's happened to me at Orthodox synagogues 10, 15 years ago too. It's happened to me at Catholic churches for baptism. It's happened to me a lot where I'm not greeted well or I'm looked out. Now the Coptic was the worst one, but anyway, I just show up. I don't call. And yeah, so not good. Definitely call first.
Yeah, well, I would consider it a courtesy probably for the especially here in West Michigan where there's just not a big or frankly any significant Orthodox Jewish community. Showing up as the Gentile, could not that I look particularly threatening, but it's not a usual thing.
Yeah, I showed up at an Orthodox church in the South, unannounced. That wasn't a smart idea. Or Orthodox synagogue. That was not a smart idea. That was in 2009. That was a really bad idea.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, 2010. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with churches, I could see it being more of a easier to spot you as out of place at an Orthodox church. A Catholic church, probably less so. Unless it's like one of those Society of Pius X chapels where they only know their own.
Well, I went to a Catholic church because one of my wife's friends was being baptized, and they got baptized on Easter weekend, and so that was the longest service I'd ever sat in my life. We got there at 7 and left at 7 p.m. and left at 1:30 a.m. And I got hit with so much holy water from the saucers and stuff, and they did communion, and I was looking weird, and then everybody was staring at me. Now, like they knew I didn't belong there. Me and my wife didn't belong there. And then I looked back behind me, like right before we left, and I saw a place with glass all the way around it with like 15 people in it. It said visitor area. I was like, oh, I'm in the wrong place.
This is a Roman Catholic church?
Yeah. It's
that's wild.
Well, I'd rather not say what town it was in, but yeah. It's all right. Hold on. It was a South American Roman Catholic church.
Interesting.
Everything was done in Spanish.
Oh, okay.
So everybody I know who is Catholic is from other countries, from South America.
That makes more sense. So it was a church in South America.
No, it's a church in North Carolina, but it's a South American denomination. Of
Catholics.
Yes, of Catholics. Like everybody there the preacher was from Peru.
Okay. So it's just that was the people.
Yes, 90% Latin.
Yeah.
I remember seeing those churches in Brooklyn when I lived there. It was mostly Spanish.
Were they Roman Catholic or were they?
I wouldn't be able to tell, but yeah, I just remember I lived like in a Latin area.
I mean, there's a ton of like one-off, non-denominational, Hispanic churches, and I mean, East Austin will have a bunch of them. I used to live nearby. But typically the Catholic ones will identify themselves as such, as Roman Catholic. So that okay, they're a Catholic church, not just some rando evangelical one.
Yeah.
Well, it was definitely a Roman Catholic church. But it was, like I said, everything they did was in Spanish and Latin. I had no idea what the hell they were talking about for 6 hours.
Trey says, I do want to say I am more closer to an atheist than anybody in this server, and I go to church. And Trey, I believe you. I'm just
Well, I
teasing
mean,
Trey.
I go to church, but it's everybody's different. The journey is different for everybody. You have to choose. You have to find. I can justify what I do, although I'm more centered towards the Torah and the Tanakh than I am the New Testament. Matter of fact, I only accept like 5 books out of the New Testament as as partially inspired. Notice I said partially. So yeah, I walk a fine line. It's hard to walk this line, but for me, it's worth it. Right? Not
Yeah.
everybody should, not everybody can or would or can intellectually justify the line that I walk, and I don't expect anybody to.
Ben, what church do you go to?
Yeah, I don't go to a church, but it was. It's interesting to hear all your discussions because I'm having the same kind of. I feel like I have similar struggles. Like we're trying to find like a community, a Jewish community, now in Austin, where I'm also kind of I have a feeling of even when I go to the Chabad, even though it's the most welcoming place. I am coming kind of like an outsider. I don't know what hours they're there. The gate is closed. I'm not sure how the service works 100%. So it's kind of tough there are those like very small details that you need that get you in the door. And then as I go more there, I'm trying to understand how to integrate that more. Like what kind of activities or what kind of participation would be better for me and my wife? Like what could my wife do? So, and the struggles there, especially when you get to Orthodox, those things are like they're much more different than any other community that we've belonged to in the past. Whether it's my wife that was like more part of like a Reform Jewish background, or myself not belonging to anything in the past. So it's interesting just to hear all these very similar challenges, but from different backgrounds.
Isn't Rabbi Mullet and Molat, Rafi? Isn't Rafi in Austin or is he in Houston?
I think I've heard that he's in Houston. I haven't contacted him or anything, but I think he's in Houston. What I've heard.
Okay.
I think that's what I've heard
Yeah.
too. Which is a long way from, well, not a super long way from Austin, but
Well,
that's a drive.
Yeah.
it is a drive. Yeah.
I do need to visit more of Texas though, but that's
I said that after living there for 8 years. There's a lot of Texas to visit, and it's
Right.
a long ways away from Austin. And yeah, I would encourage you to visit South Padre. It's like 6 hours south.
Okay.
That's probably the nicest. That's like the closest to Florida you're gonna get in Austin, like the beach, and like the Gulf.
Yeah.
Corpus Christi.
Corpus Christi.
Offensive to our ears. That is also like not a very like beautiful place. Like there's a lot of like oil rigs you can see. Or I'm thinking of Port Aransas. Corpus is a little different, but like that's kind of like if you got 3 hours to drive, you can go to Corpus Christi.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're better off getting on an airplane and going to Florida.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to get all my different to think about. I mean, I have the usual spots that I need to go now that I have some family in New York, so I need to visit them, and I have in Israel. So all these things that are kind of like the places that I already need to go, and then somewhere in between all of those, I need to figure out where do I want to go. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I think Trey's right about needing community, but I think it's different for everybody else. For everybody, it's all different. Yeah, did either one of y'all know of the like Pentecostals and the Baptists that become Torah observant, not Messianics, but like Torah roots type folks?
Not really.
Right. So there's a big contingent of them in Missouri, right? Most of them are preppers, off-grid survivalists that are like Karaite Christians, right? Like actually follow the Bible, all like they're Orthodox Jews who believe in Christ but not Messianic, and they don't follow anything but the Bible. And they have managed to create a one hell of a huge community in the Ozarks. There's probably, I know of at least 7 very large communities. I personally know some of those guys. There's well over 1,000 where nothing like this existed 5 years ago.
So what's keeping them? How do they become so plentiful?
So I can tell you about 2 specific guys. They're on the internet. I've met both of them. I've done mission work with both of them. I was a Torah observant Christian for a long time. I did Sola Script Torah all the way to the furthest point you could do, and then realized I had to submit authority to somebody, and doing it on my own wasn't going to work, so I changed. But so one guy is Pastor Joe Fox. He's in the Ozarks. He's got a YouTube channel called Shofar Mountain. Now, he started as a Christian preacher, and when he switched up to Bible only Torah observant, he took about 5 of his congregation with him, and everything else he built off YouTube, doing mission work, doing charities, talking about the Bible, just making content, being on Instagram. And the same thing with Bear Independent, right? 5 years ago, he had no community in Eastern Oklahoma. Now he's got 40 guys around him, 40 families, I should say. And that was all built off of being true to what you're saying, actually believing what you're doing charity, and inviting people to come out and help with charity. That's where I met both of them on mission trips, right? They put the call out, hey, we got so-and-so going on here. If you don't mind living out of a tent, eating out of a can for a week, we need volunteers, right? And that's mostly how they built, right? Doing those kind of selfless acts. And I'm not saying everybody can do it, right? I'm not saying that that's the one true way. I'm just saying that is a way, right? There is some small anecdotal evidence that kind of stuff works, right? But the Torah Roots movement is growing and gaining steam. If you go to a ministry website called 119 Ministries, they have a house church finder, and you'd just be amazed on how many little house churches are all across the world. And they're grassroots in it, and they're building their own communities. I'm not saying they're successful, and I'm not saying it's working. I'm just saying it's something that could be looked into.
Yeah, it's interesting, the different aspects of, like, I was listening to some of the conversation that you had when Trey was also here. It's interesting to think about, like, when we say community, it's different things. It's meeting with people. It's the worship part. It's different activities. It's volunteering. It's the more studying intellectual stuff or training, kind of like what you mentioned, of how that gets also more complicated when it comes to family, children. So yeah, I'm like, yeah, and life is like, it's difficult. It's like, it's sometimes like you go to, I know I've met people also that would go to the Orthodox, go to a modern Orthodox synagogue for some services, and then we'll go to conservative for some activities or something like that. So you kind of like, some sort of, yeah, you do it in a way that works for you, and obviously there's constraints on that. You want to be true and not sacrifice or compromise too much. But yeah, I don't know.
You step away from it's a hard thing altogether. I have a lot of respect for anybody who steps into this realm and tries, follow your convictions, do the best you can. And I don't think you'll be judged too harshly as long as you did it with his name on your tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what else? Ben, how's your transition into Texas life?
It's been good. It's been rough, or not rough in a too bad of a way, but this is the first time that we moved into a house instead of an apartment. So that's kind of like we're finding out new things. We're still renting, so it's kind of like, we don't have full responsibility, but it's like it's good training to figure out what we need to worry about now.
Yeah. I remember when we moved from Chicago to Austin, right? It was like there's no apartments really to rent. I mean, not like there was in the city. So yeah, we rented a house and got used to that. So I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm trying to figure out now that I'm like feel a little bit more settled. Kind of what do I want to, like, what are the first things that I want to do, get my hands on, or in terms of community too, because I don't know people here. So yeah.
Zero?
Actually, one person, cousin of my wife.
Okay.
That's it.
Are you north, south, east? North. Okay. Actually, I have somebody I should introduce you to.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll make a note. That's somebody I think you'd like. You guys would hit it off. He's a friend of mine.
Got it. And does he go to a Universalist?
No, he's Jewish. He's Jewish. Yeah, and I was friends with him before I even realized or was Noahide myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's not observant. Maybe a little bit. I think his parents are Zionists or something who are in, or his father was Zionist or went through a Zionist phase or was becoming more religious, and he was like weirded out by that. So no, he's a good guy. He works in our world too.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's interesting to find different people. But also, yeah, I went to like a Chabad like dinner, Friday dinner.
You went to that?
Hmm?
I think you were talking to Jacob about that, yeah? And you went?
It might have been a different. This one was like a young professionals, and there was like I haven't seen so many Jews in a while since I've been to New York, really, probably. But there are like so many that it really surprised me. But it's interesting, yeah, that they don't. And then like at a dinner with my wife's cousin before, or like after that, and he made like a funny comment how they're like the only Jews in Austin are in that room where we were eating, and he kind of didn't realize how many more. Like he's so disconnected,
yeah,
from that he didn't realize how many are actually in Austin. So it's just funny to know that it's like here.
Yeah, Austin's probably because of the way it's grown so much too, that I'm sure that it's like there's so many transplants and folks that it's like a diaspora within the diaspora. Like you know, like I would imagine that. I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Is there a deal with people from the Midwest moving to the South? I hear of so many like Chicago people both in Memphis, that were when I was in Memphis, and now in Austin, I hear so many Chicago transplants. I don't know if that's an American
Uh,
thing.
that's definitely been a theme.
Mm-hmm.
Chicagoans leaving Chicago for other places, and they come around to Michigan too.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, because in New York, I don't remember hearing about too many people from Chicago.
yeah, I mean, it's the flight out of like blue states or the big city where taxes and crime and all that kind of stuff has gone up, or just people get older and have families and they don't want to deal with all the headaches of raising a kid in the city, or more than a kid, children, a family. So yeah, it's fairly common. I wouldn't say that in Austin there was a big Chicago or Midwestern inflow. It's mostly California.
Wow, yeah.
I mean,
I'll
like,
tell you,
huge.
I'll tell you, in North Carolina, we have a lot of Massachusetts and Connecticut.
Really?
Have been coming for about 20 years now. Yeah. In the last census, I think it was 46% of our population wasn't born in North Carolina.
So Elijah says he thinks there's a modern Orthodox synagogue in North Austin. So
Yeah.
do modern Orthodox like think of themselves self-consciously as modern Orthodox, or do they just think they're Orthodox, and this is fine, like?
Yeah. I mean, I know one couple that's a modern Orthodox, and they would call themselves modern Orthodox. But yes, I mean, this is like I know there is a more modern Orthodox community in North Austin, but that requires more, it's easier to go to Chabad than the modern Orthodox. So that's why I haven't gone there. That's kind of part of the struggle. That would require more sacrifice and more work on my end to figure out how to make that work. Because the modern Orthodox is like usually they can be like a bigger community. They would be bigger communities, like both in Memphis and Austin, and they would have their own neighborhoods where they have the fence around them where you can carry things on Shabbat and stuff like that. So they would kind of like own that, and it would be much more of an enclosed, like a well knit community. So obviously that's a little harder to get into, especially if you're someone like myself who is Jewish but is coming from a secular background and is not necessarily clear about how deep into the rabbit hole I want to go, right? So that's where Chabad is kind of like is allowing me to explore that, learn, understand what I can do, and then maybe. But there's also differences. Again, could be like some theological differences between those two groups as well.
So Chabad is easier than modern Orthodox community. Is that because they're more friendly to kind of secular Jews who are coming in and like trying to learn and everything, versus like, hey, we're an established community, and so it's like we don't really know how to deal with people who are outside?
Probably. I mean, I might be doing disservice to the Austin people. They might be the nicest people ever, but it's just the nature of when you have a bigger organization or company or community, it's kind of hard. It's more harder for the people there they're busier just with other things that are having to do with their own community, with their own stuff. It's and in Chabad, the whole MO, Chabad actually is like, it's mostly people that are coming from different backgrounds,
Right.
less of a community. That's a trade-off where the Chabad is not really, yeah.
Yeah, it's like their posture. They're like an outpost for bringing in versus a sort of established community doing their own thing.
Yeah, and that means that people will go away, right? So it's harder to actually have a tight community in the Chabad long term. But I see it as a place, a rung in a ladder, and more so. But for this particular reason, a rung in a ladder.
Yeah. but I'd imagine that the rabbit hole runs maybe potentially deeper in Chabad than
Yeah, I
depending,
mean,
so like if you stick with them, they're going to take you deeper down the rabbit hole. You're going to show up on the
um,
streams with a black hat and like the whole bit, right?
yeah, but I mean, yeah. So that depends on also where you see yourself and what I'm thinking for myself and for my family. So yeah.
Well, wouldn't Chabad be better if you're planning on being transient your whole life? Right? If you have in this little stream, because I don't know you from Adam, Ben. In this little stream, you've talked about you've moved several different places. So are you planning on continuing to move?
Not necessarily. So I've moved for various reasons. So most of them having to do with my wife's career, but now we're more, at least for the next few years, we're more here. I don't know where I'm going to be. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like something that I need to figure out, and it's almost like a test here in Austin to figure out for ourselves if we can create a community by ourselves, even though our families are far away. So they're in California, some in New York, mostly, and for me, mostly in Israel. So if we can do that, then we will feel comfortable having children here and growing them here, because we know that there's a space for us and people to help us out, and all the things that we've talked about. And if not, we might need to move somewhere else where we have more family.
Like Israel, right?
Like Israel, yeah.
I mean, you're going to end up there someday, one way or another, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
Why delay the inevitable?
That would be an interesting move.
I bet.
Yeah, well, Jonathan is why is it that you don't go to the synagogue, Jonathan? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I don't know that. I mean, I guess the Chabad house here is. I'm not sure how active of a community it is, but I mean that's a good question, and mostly out of inertia. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So I should probably go, and shame on me for not going sooner. Yeah.
Well, I'm not trying to judge you or nothing.
No. I know. It's a good question. I mean, I have I have to also balance the family considerations too. I'm a little more advanced in my Judaism than my wife, for instance. So
I understand.
So she's not quite as on board, but also like So we'll see. I mean the status quo is not tenable, probably, right? Like it's not ideal, at least. It's probably tenable, but it's probably not great. So one way or another, I think we need to get into some kind of a community, and even if it's a sort of kosher Trinitarian Christian group, Orthodox Church or something, there's still probably going to end up being some problems with it, because like I'm not going to become a sort of observant Christian. So, and I'm not going to pretend to be otherwise with the church. And so they'd have to sort of be okay with that, I guess, to whatever degree.
I understand that completely. I'm in a similar boat. Wife's not on board neither. It's just, one of the things I had thought about was if I can't find what I'm looking for where I live, then at one point I was thinking about looking for wherever it is and moving there, right?
Yeah.
The problem with that is, at least on my end, is I don't know what I'm looking for, right? Because this is a journey, and for everybody here, it's a journey. And what you think is good today might not be good next year.
Yeah. So in the tech world, right, there's that notion of the early adopter, right? Like that's been a cliche in tech for a long time, and like Clown says like there haven't been God-fearers for 2,000 years, which maybe that's true, maybe that's not true, but certainly it feels like, I mean, I'm just totally basing this off nothing other than just intuition, but like I think we're at the very early adoption curve of mainstream Gentile, folks who have Judaism as their belief system or religion. So I'm patient, I guess, in that sense, or like don't worry too much about the fact that there's not a clear path necessarily right now, and I'm just willing and able to be at the front of that adoption curve, and see what happens. Right, like maybe it won't be a thing, but I don't think it's nothing, and I think that if anything, the internet and the algorithms are going to just push this forward very quickly.
All right. So I have one question for you, and Ben, I did not mean to cut you off. I do apologize.
No?
But I have one question is, all right, and I believe you're right. I believe something's happening that's going to be changing a lot of things in the next 50 years. I might not see it in my lifetime, but I believe the landscape of religion is changing, especially in America. Question is, if you see that as the early adopter phase, what are you doing to prepare when the opportunity pops forward? Right? Like what I mean, are there books you're reading? I mean, what are you digging into to prepare yourself for when the door busts open? And I'm not trying to be accusatory or anything like that.
No, my funny answer is like, looking at real estate in near Jerusalem, but the problem with that is then I'll probably get kicked out when the various tribes get their share, and I'll have to go hang out with the Levites. But no, I mean I'm just paying attention, I guess, is the best I can say. Like, there's yeah, that's really the best there is. I don't have a particular like rabbi that I'm following. I guess is it Rabbi Shirky, who's the one who speaks Hebrew and French primarily, but like doesn't speak a lot of English that Jacob talks about, right? So it's like, well, it's hard to really kind of follow what he's up to, but yeah, I mean, it's going to, I think, eventually force the Orthodox community to grapple with it more, and it will become more mainstream, right? And so I'm just kind of like, I'll do what I can. I guess probably I think I just had this thought like last week or earlier this week, like probably the number one thing I should do is learn Hebrew. I should learn the language. And then have that be a starting point.
Yeah. One thing I've looked into, I don't know if you know these guys are, they wrote the book The Divine Code for Noahides. They have a university, kind of like an online training program for Noahides out of Israel. And I've been looking into taking some of their classes. Jacob doesn't seem to think it's a good idea, but I've thought that there might be some need for formal training at some point, and even if it's trash training, and I don't know if it is or not, financially supporting something like that, even if it's a one-time thing, is helping build the infrastructure. So I had a conversation with Rabbi Mullet a few months ago, and it's actually coming out on Sunday.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we talked about was building the infrastructure now, and what is it that we can do as a informal community to continue to lay the pipes in the ground, right? Because you need water pipes and sewer pipes where you can build a house.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this might go into a little bit of what you were talking about too, just mentally and physically, emotionally preparing yourself for entering into new communities and how to handle those things.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that question that you asked, because I feel like I was kind of about to say something like that as well, in terms of um, also of like how I've went to Chabad and went to like, just they have a lot of Chabads have like courses that they go through, like these very like prepared courses, and they teach you stuff. So that's just one activity that you can do in Chabad too, but that I've done. But what I was going to say, that I'm also kind of just learning, like I don't necessarily have the particular the curriculum that I need to, that I know what I need to study, but kind of like what you said, I just need to learn Hebrew. So that's what I'm just trying to do as well. Just like reading more Rambam, reading more of the Torah with Rashi. You're gonna just get to know that, and then kind of that helps me, even though I don't know what it is exactly going to do for me. I don't know its effect. I don't know why. I mean, I know the reason why I'm doing it, but I don't know how it's going to trickle down. That's just those are just the habits that I believe will help me now in the future, to for myself, for my family, for the community somehow. So I just need to. I know that at least that's the basic belief, that these are the baseline things that I should be doing, um, at least to some extent, because I don't do it like, like, I'm not saying that I'm doing it all the time or reading everything or anything like that, but just like doing some of those things.
Good luck with Rashi. It took me 10 weeks to get through Genesis. Yeah, reading Genesis and reading the commentary along with it, because I was doing the same thing. I mean, I was reading Genesis and then reading the commentary directly after I read the passages, and it took me about 10 weeks to get through it. And for me, it was difficult, but I'm not, not y'all, but good luck.
Yeah, no, that's why I need to do it every year. That's why there's a cycle every year that I would need to go through. So I don't. I expect it will take me many years to continuously gain more and more insights from it. So that's what's nice about it too. Like, I know that I'm going to continue learning from it.
Yeah, starting with Genesis 1:1 is a tough learning curve if you are not
Yeah.
initiated in the Hebrew, for sure.
All right, fellas, I've overstayed my welcome. I hope y'all have a good day.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing your interview.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. That thing was recorded in December, so it's a little aged, but it's still pretty good. Busy people have a hard time getting things like that out. It's almost an hour long, so a lot of editing on this part. But y'all
All
have
right.
a good day.
All right, thanks,
Nice
Billy.
meeting
See
you,
ya.
Nice meeting you. Bye.
It's funny how December is like ages ago in this day and age.
Yeah, usually, streams. You stream something. It's either live or or you take something. Yeah, it's like the shorts attention span is hard.
Just getting shorter. That's I'm not sure what that means.
I don't know.
Feels that way. So are you still fun employed, or what are you up to, Ben?
I'm still searching.
Good.
Like, in some way, I'm busy. Like, I have a lot of interviews
Yeah.
in good companies too, but it's a process that takes long. So
Well, I think things are picking up again, so you
Mhm.
should have good. I guess you got Rosh Hashanah coming up, right? So
Yeah.
it will all be decided very soon.
right, there'll be a decree.
That's right.
So hopefully I'll manage to go to. That's why I'm going That's why I'm going to all the services.
That's right.
Um,
You get to go to all of them. Go to all
all
of
of
them.
them until
Mhm.
so I can make sure. It was so funny. I've been to that reminds me of I've been to this like event with all the young Jews in Austin, and obviously the rabbi, he's a younger rabbi that kind of runs this thing in South Austin. He's like a cool guy. He's like more of, he enjoys that. He's definitely the guy to have this young professional kind of thing.
Okay.
So that's the character, but it was really funny because he was telling people that I want to I obviously started with the story. I don't remember the story, but he was telling everybody how that I just wanted to tell you. I wanted just to give you the good news that God is bribable. You can bribe him.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you can ask him for whatever you want, or you can ask him for something, and you tell them what you're gonna do, but you just need to stick to your end of the table. Just the end of your to your end of the bargain.
You're into the deal. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So just do what you need to do. If you say, okay, from now on, I'll donate 10% of whatever deal. I think he was talking about a sales guy. It's like a sales guy that said, okay, if I get this deal, it's really important for me. I'll give 10% to a charity. So just do that, and God is bribable, so it's all good. So, which actually, if you think about it, sounds actually kind of nice.
10% though is that's required though. Like that. That's not a bonus. That's not technically tzedakah, right? It's
yeah, that is required. Yeah, I think maybe you can.
What's the word for that? What's the word for the 10%?
Maybe that's maaser.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's damn word. Yep. Well, I was gonna say that like I think, on the whole discussion about church and community and all that, like for a Noahide, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the 7 laws, 6 of them are pretty like uncontroversial, right? At least in terms of like how to fit into the rest of the world or just how to live. The idolatry one is the tricky one, because then you got to be like, well, what does that mean, and what are the boundaries of that, right? So it's like, I think most of them are prohibitions, with the exception of like setting up courts of justice, which that's a tough one too for an individual to like know, like, well, how do I embody that, or how do I contribute to this, because it's more of a communal thing, right? That's like a law. It feels like given to the nations, not to an individual. I don't know. Are there sort of analogous mitzvot that are like collective, or do they all kind of boil down to like individual contribution? To the degree that you're the appropriate individual to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I was laughing because the obvious one is to procreate, which is
well, everyone's got to do it, but you do your part, and your part in that, right? Like,
yeah.
I guess like I'm not sure how I establish courts of justice outside of principled, like first principles kind of like things. But anyway, be that as it may.
I mean, I think I get the question. It's a good question, and I feel like part of what I find interesting, and maybe this is what is missing. I find interesting in Judaism, in the discussions about the mitzvot, is that it brings down a lot of these things. It makes them more concrete. So, like what you just mentioned in terms of like, well, that's the 10%, right? If you want to be generous, then 10% means you're generous, and then beyond that means you're very generous. It puts kind of like, obviously it's not as dry, but at least you have these kind of like these constraints or these definitions that help you, help you move forward or understand things more concretely.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, even donation is like, maybe that's not the way that you're thinking, that you were asking about, but that's also, in a way, that's also communal. In terms of, first of all, you need to have somebody to donate to. Second of all, you need to have. I mean, like it's hard to, like if I'm donating something, I can do that on the internet and go through a Stripe form, and send that out. But I'm assuming that somebody on the other side is going to be able to make that happen, is going to do something with that money.
Right.
If it's not me volunteering, but then also volunteering, like, so it could be part of that is to create my own version, my own kind of like way of of my own soup kitchen, Or if I
Yeah.
go to the soup kitchen, then I just start at the soup kitchen doing like the most basic stuff, but then how can I move past that? And I guess maybe that's like even if you think about like setting up courts of justice, is like what is the example of a court of justice in your like in our lives right now? Like it could be like an actual court, but maybe there's another place where those kind of judgments happen. And how can you take place like put yourself in a situation where you can help out in those interactions, and then how can that become more and more, how can you get more and more involved or and create more and more?
Right.
I do like to think about it in terms of the creation, the being creative, and that was something that came up in the book club, the Soloveitchik book club, the first one.
Mhm.
That he was mentioning how creation is such an important kind of like that's like the purpose, if not a very big part of the purpose, is to for a person to be creative. So, and that kind of for me rings true as somebody that is thinks himself as creative, both like when I was like being like a creative person, writing
Mhm.
stuff like that.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, that seems, I like that. So how can I like maybe play with stuff, be an individual contributor, and then move past that and kind of like create more and more spaces.
Yep. Orchestrate
Yeah.
or curate or whatever, right? Like, yeah. I think the other thing the Noahides would struggle with then is, so outside of everyone gets fixated on the idolatry thing, especially if they come out of another religion, or whatever. But there are not as many sort of positive commandments, or it gets a little dicey about whether or not the mitzvot given to the nation of Israel are allowed, or like the Sabbath, keeping the Sabbath, for instance, right? That's like kind of, that one is sort of stands alone. But like, what about Noahides putting on tefillin, or prayers that they say, right? And like, there are some things that are appropriate and some things that aren't, and like Rambam talks about that it's okay if they want to do it, let them do it. They get a reward, right? But like, it's not required, right? So it's like voluntary, right? And so it's like, all right, what's the list of voluntary mitzvot for a Noahide that are okay to keep or do, and like, what's the list of things you shouldn't do?
Yeah.
And then of course you need to learn Torah to know about those mitzvot. So, but we're only supposed to learn the Torah that applies to us as Noahides, right? And so it's like, so I think that's like where I think it gets a little more advanced, like where it's like you're trying to do right by God, but also like you want to get some extra credit, or you want to do more, or you want to figure out how to carve out a liturgical life, right? Your work, the work that you do, and there's no clear path, or not even, I wouldn't even say like not even a clear path. There's really there are a few paths, like nothing well tread. And to Billy's question earlier about like, what am I paying attention to? I'm just paying attention, like, because I'm kind of just keeping my radar open to hearing kind of what's out there. Like I don't subscribe or follow a particular Noahide group. I don't think I would follow a Noahide movement in particular, because I'd be a little suspicious of it if it wasn't pretty tightly connected to an Orthodox rabbi or an Orthodox community of some sort, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think Judaism itself went through a process of codification, right? I mean, like the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Torah, the two very like systematic books of law were both 11th century, or at least started at the 11th century. So I mean, obviously there were laws before that, but codification happened through time to kind of make it more simple. Obviously there's some could be trade-offs with that as well, but I imagine kind of like what Billy was mentioning, like what the next steps and the pipes in this, and the piping and the foundation, like yes, if like some kind of codification or complexification needs to happen, right? Because more people, I imagine, I don't know, but I mean, I imagine that more people are having the questions that you're having right now. So if these are going to keep popping up, there's going to be more of a need to answer them and to codify and to make it more clear to people, because yeah, those are all, I think, great questions that I ask myself with many other things. So
Yeah. Well, and what I was saying about like the internet and the algorithm, the algorithm with a capital A, like it's going to expose more and more Christians, Gentiles to Judaism, and I think it's just going to naturally, especially the way the algorithm works, like the more interest that they show in this phenomenon, the more it's going to show other people. I mean, my father, who's a boomer, told me the other day, he's like, oh yeah, I've been watching this Manus Friedman videos. Really likes him. Interesting guy. Don't believe in all of his takes on stuff. And I'm like, okay, like that's fine. But I'm like, you are on a very slippery slope.
How did he get there? Yeah.
Yeah. How did he get there? I mean, maybe, like there could be some kind of a connection where, my algorithm feeds into his, but we're not like connected on Google or YouTube or whatever. So it's like, how did you see that? And like, and now you're watching that. So, it's very interesting, the exposure. And I think that's going to be, I mean, like Jacob has talked about, like Dead Sea Scrolls being, miraculous in his mind and stuff. But like, if you take a step back, the internet is fairly miraculous in that respect, or like a lot of the technology, like, maybe not like a miracle, like, traditional miracle, but, certainly enables a massively accelerated revelation, or like accelerated communication that like would kind of would be sufficient, if not necessary, for a messianic age to fulfill the prophecies of the messianic age, and like what would be, because how else in history would you be able to like, how could the world like basically receive the same communication almost instantaneously, 40 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like I don't know if paradigm shift is the right term for this, but there's definitely a category jump in terms of what the internet did to communication. And it's kind of like a sort of a cliche to say it, but as we go through it, I think we discover more and more kind of like what the effects that it has and kind of what it touches on. So now suddenly we can see how it matters in terms of theology and the communication. At first maybe it was obvious that we will do something on the political level, but now we see that it also does something on the theological level, or on all those different things. So yeah, it's interesting what you can think about, the possibilities of what these kind of tools or technologies can can help bring about, and hopefully in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, they come with their bad too. And,
for sure.
I think we could all readily think about the evils and ills of the technology, but it also has its um, use for good.
Yeah, I mean, you can just as easily search for how do I practice paganism.
Sure,
The
and
WikiHow for how to do a circle of with the candles and everything. So you can choose your way.
mhm,
You can only lean towards the right one.
right. Well, and even all the exposure, just the exposure to all sorts of ideas, thoughts, philosophies, even like Kabbalah, for instance, like, that can be learned about in a very naive way and misunderstood, or it's out there. The stuff is out there, and it's in falsehoods out there too. And I think that's a large part of what we talk about in these discussions and on the Discord, and like just trying to sort out what's true, what's good, because there's just more. We're just being bombarded with more information and more points of view and more takes. Um, Again, for good or for bad. Like, it seems like we have the raw information now, and then now it's about filtering that out.
Right.
Whereas in the past, you were probably more a victim of your circumstances, or
You wouldn't be able to pick your sources.
yeah, you wouldn't have had the opportunity to sort of evaluate what's on the outside.
Hmm.
as-
Yeah,
as-
but you
as
still
well.
need to pick your sources. Yeah, I think that's a struggle of like what do you how do you slice the information?
Trey, why do you want to have a discussion about atheism with me? Do I seem so godless to you? Tell me about what you want to talk about. I probably only have about 10 more minutes before
Yeah.
I have to attend to my adult life
Me
again.
too. I need to jump at 45.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. All right. So unless somebody else comes on, we're counting down here 12 minutes. What else do you have to say, Ben? What do you want to
What else do I have?
to the 4 people watching now and the hundreds more who will watch later? There's scores more.
Dozens. Where's that? Is that a quote of somebody saying dozens?
Dozens?
Some movie. I don't know. I will look this up later. My head is filled with like movie quotes that I can't remember. But yeah, I don't know.
Shots fired. Trey thinks atheism is honestly a lot easier for you. Well, maybe. Yeah. I mean, what does that even mean? Atheism is easier for me.
Like cognitively or like.
I mean, I guess it's an easier life, right? There's maybe fewer obligations. You don't need to worry about as
More
many
comfortable.
things. Yeah, maybe more comfortable. But
Yeah. It's less costly.
it's maybe less costly.
Well, yeah, no, I'm just I was saying that because it's funny this kind of sacrifices, and maybe this will lead to an actual good point. But it's funny how the kind of sacrifices that did you find yourself needing to make, and then you realize, okay, this is what I'm working for, and also these are and then suddenly the things that you do have more meaning. So that I'm kind of having this discussion with my wife in terms of trying to understand, okay, what are like it would be good for us to have ideals, and then we know what we're striving towards, and then we know even when it means like for a Shabbat dinner, for example, like my wife sometimes like bakes the challah, so that means she needs to like solid maybe 2 hours,
Yeah.
and then we need to also get more food for Shabbat. So it's these little sacrifices that matter, and then you need to act to be able to do those things, and you need to create space for them. And then I think that is part of this, like how this complex things actually kind of gets you to care about the right things and to suddenly all these different points um, all these different points lead you, like they make you, like they force you to think about important things and to make like important decisions, whether it's like doing something for the community, or going to a community, or inviting friends. So if we're staying home for Shabbat, that means we need to invite more friends instead of just staying alone and watching Netflix. It's like a weird constraint that you don't think about necessarily at first, but it's suddenly like, okay, so now that we have this thing, we need, like, there's only like these kind of versions of activities that we can do. So now from this selected group of activities, what should we do?
Right, it just changes your frame, right? Like, so
Yeah.
now you've got to make prioritizations in a different with a different set of constraints.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, the thing is that maybe if I would be smart enough, I would be able to think through all those different of those cause and effect and how that will go. But the thing is that you don't really know what it's going to contribute to. So I think I told this story to Jacob. I don't remember if it's on a stream or something. Antonio, I'll just say that in a second. Where I started. I have a very good friend, and he's also secular, and he lives in Israel. But we're very good friends. But we didn't talk. Kind of like we were trying to talk every week, but we didn't get to. But then at one point, I told them, like, do you want to just like, because I've been thinking about this idea of a chevruta, of like studying something together, whatever it would be. And I was asking if he wants to study or read through something or study something. And I think I might have mentioned Rambam. And he was like, you know what? My brother did that at one point, so I will do that. And, he's like a totally secular guy. Like, our main conversation topics in the past were like Louis C.K., and maybe that's it. So, and now kind of like it suddenly enabled us to have, and now we meet weekly and talk about that, right? So, and I didn't know, and I contribute part of that to me studying it in the first place. But again, this is kind of like where it led to.
Antonio, what's up?
Hey man, just checking in. I heard you might be trying atheism.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Trey is being incendiary. So he says, yes, cognitively, it just seems we have to jump through more hoops. It just feels that if you're Noahide, God doesn't really care about you that much. I don't know what he's talking about.
Maybe he's struggling with trying to be a Noahide. I don't know.
I don't know either. Like it's kind of confusing. I mean, it's there's no like cognitive hoops. Like there's not cognitive dissonance, but it definitely there's practically from like and actually in some sense from like a lifestyle perspective, Noahidism is pretty easy. Noahidism. There's not a lot of obligations. It's and like or I mean, I guess there's some pretty big ones, but they're ones that I was kind of already keeping. But I don't understand the sense that like God doesn't care about Gentiles who are particularly like God-fearer Gentiles. So or anybody, frankly. So I don't know, Trey. Like keep trying. I mean, we can do a longer conversation, but in 5 minutes, I don't know that we're going to get very far. Antonio, how's fatherhood treating you?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
Very blessed. It's it's my first one.
Yeah.
My lady's third, and yeah, he's just growing so fast. The experiences, he seems small to me still every day. Yeah. And I'll look back on earlier pictures and wonder, well, how'd that happen?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
they'll seem small for a few years at least. So that doesn't go away for a while. I'm not even sure. Well, I couldn't. My oldest is under 10, so I don't even really know if that ever ends. Feeling small, but
Yeah. It's just hard for me to imagine my son being a toddler because he's just a baby right now.
oh yeah. Well, you'll get over that pretty quickly. Then you'll it all feels normal. It's like, and I think a friend of mine told me like, you know, the good and the bad that happens, right? Like, sometimes they're tough, sometimes they're easy, sometimes they're tough, but like nothing lasts more than like 2 weeks. It's like kind of a 2 week thing. And so if like you're just like at your wits end and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is the worst. They won't sleep, they won't do this, they won't do that. They're 2 weeks go by and they kind of just like all of a sudden they're changed and they're like easier. And then all of a sudden like 2 weeks of like very easy parenting happens where it's like, oh my gosh, they're so easy. This is great. And then all of a sudden 2 weeks and then some new, they start having tantrums, some new personality thing comes out that like you're like anyway, it's so it's
That
good and
sounds
it's
pretty
bad.
accurate.
Yeah, it's like that you won't have to suffer through it forever. It's not endless punishment. It's just punishment for 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. All right. Trey says, okay, I'll talk later. It seems as though if you're a true Noahide, you believe that God gave a revelation to a specific group of people and didn't really have in mind incorporating all his other subjects. That's not true.
It just seems like Trey hasn't read the Bible.
Yeah, and I don't know how that's even racist, but it's but nice try, Trey. Nice try. I get it. It's like I'll throw that in there. No, I think
I think being a Noahide, it's like the opposite of I don't know if you know the meme copium, but
yeah, I think it's just I think it's interesting when the copium accusation is thrown at Noahides, and it's like, well, how's this a cope? I mean, it's I don't know. It's like there's no good analogy. I think is the hard thing. It's not being like a Christian catechumen. You're not a convert necessarily. You could be. You have the potential maybe to be, but you sort of have a different role to play in the game, right? But like even among Jews, there are the priestly class and the non-priestly class, right? So not everyone is a Cohen, and that's okay. And there's nothing better about Cohen. They just have their different role to play, right?
Well, I think that has very much to deal with the modern culture where it's very much intolerance of difference, and tolerance is equated with making everything the same. So we're all special, so to speak, when really all the differences are special.
Right. Yeah, I think that's right. So, I mean, but it doesn't keep me up at night. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. I don't know. Okay, then how did God expect Australian natives like to worship God? Well, I mean, there is the fact that like people are only accountable for what they know. So, if you really don't have the knowledge, you're only judged based on what you have. So anyway, Trey, we'll step into the ring another time. Ben, good to hang on a Friday. Good Shabbos.
Shabbos. Thank you very much, Antonio. It was nice meeting you. I think it was the first time I saw you.
Yes, nice meeting you, Ben.
All right, I'm going to end the broadcast. Peace, everyone.
Peace.